This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. Yeah, we've never done this before, but I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by my top left, Marcos Villegas from Fight Hub TV. Bottom left, Michelle Joy Phelps from Behind the Gloves. And Radio Rahim from Seconds Out. How are we all? Marcos, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm good as one can be, I guess, given the current climate and all that. But just, you know, gotta keep busy, gotta stay positive. So I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on for this.
Not a problem. Michelle, you good?
Yeah. Same old, same old.
Well, I'm having a shit time.
Let's talk about that, Rahim. Let's talk about that. What's wrong?
I'm at home for like more than a week. This is wildly uncomfortable. I've spent all the quality time I possibly can with my mother. That's over. She's not speaking to me anymore. I don't have any friends in my house. I live alone. All I can do is these stupid Zoom calls, and me and Michelle talk on Saturdays live. Like, this is my entire social experience. It's hell. I hate it all. These things are all terrible. Let's get back to boxing.
But apart from that, you good?
Oh, yeah, no, apart from that, I'm great.
Good. What I wanted to start off by talking, obviously, we are involved in some of the leading YouTube boxing channels in the world. It's safe to say that. Yeah, I'll start with you, Marcos, how the last 2 months have been for you content-wise, how it's kind of affected how you've adapted. I know here in the UK, we're looking at boxing in another 2 months in July, so we're going to kind of have that same period repeated again. But how's Fight Hub been, and how have you survived?
You know, it's been a weird thing. At first, I wanted to do a lot of interviews, and then I got over it. And I told myself, don't do interviews. There's nothing to talk about. Just chill, bro. Take this time as rest mentally and do things here and there that pique your interest. And then I was like, no, share the stories of the guys that actually contracted this thing that's going around. And I did that. You know, I'm not, it's been hard, honestly. I don't know about how you guys, your experiences, but you know, fighters started doing interviews, and then they started saying crazy shit, and then the PR people didn't want them to do interviews as much anymore, you know? So I've reached out to people, and they've told me, Marcos, wait for a little bit, or there's some news coming on, or some guys just straight out said, nah, I don't feel like doing an interview right now, bro. And then now the promoters, I guess at least over here, are wanting to wait for some of the fighters to do interviews so their pages can get the content and we don't end up out scooping them. So it's been kind of weird. You would think with people being at home, they'd want to watch more, but I think it's a bit of an overload for people because they're at home and watching so much stuff that they're kind of getting over it too. Like me, myself, I hardly even check social media now. Like, I'll check it for 15 minutes out of the day because I just don't want to see all the crap that's going on. Like, I'd rather just work on me and try to be productive and positive and just do stuff here around the house. So I ain't gonna lie, it's been really up and down, and it doesn't make things any better that I live here by myself as well. And I haven't seen any of my friends in like 2 months, and I can't even get a damn haircut. But going forward, and this is what I've had a long time to think about going forward. How is this going to change specifically for us? Because for the writers, this isn't going to change. The writers make a phone call and they get their story. But for us, people like us that do interviews, it's going to be very, very different. And you're starting to see it in other sports. In MMA, they don't do one-on-one interviews anymore for fear that some of the media members are going to give somebody out of precaution, obviously. And you're starting to see that everybody's getting grouped into Zoom calls. And in the future, I don't think that's going to change. I think for fear of any of us. God forbid one of us gets it and we do a one-on-one interview and we get a fighter sick. It's going to shut down everything completely in terms of us. So I think to avoid that, they're going to start doing Zoom interviews on one-on-ones with us, which could be a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing, I think, we're probably going to get a little bit more time than what we're used to at the events when we got people going, 2 questions, all that crap. You know, so it'll be a good thing. But the other part is I could see them going, just group everyone together, have everybody get their 2 questions in, and that's it, which is what the UFC has been doing with their Zoom interviews or whatever. So it's going to be very different because at the events too, there's only selected media being invited. And I'm basing this off of the UFC, which is the only blueprint there is right now and the only foundation that there is right now. And if you look at that and you see how boxing's going to go ahead and adapt and see what they're going to do, you got to think, well, there's a blueprint already out there. They're going to follow that closely. Media members coming from all over the place, that is a little bit risky. They're going to limit it and spread everybody out. So it's going to be completely different for us. And it's kind of worrisome because we're not going to be able to do business, I think, in my opinion, like how we were used to for, I guess, the next few months, or maybe I hope to God, and I hope this shit goes away right away. But the next foreseeable future, I think it's going to be very, very different for people like us.
Michelle, one thing that all 4 of us have got in common is that we're very hands-on with our content, in that we go out and our favourite thing to do is actually get in front of the fighter and interview the fighter, as opposed to sit back at home. And, you know, I know we've all kind of, well, I don't know about you guys, but we've had to recycle some contents, and we're using kind of content that's, should we say, available for us to use that's not our own, but our norm is to go out and find our own content and to interview the person in person. So our channels are always going to get affected by that, but there are obviously other outlets that don't rely heavily on that one-to-one interview that we all kind of go out and hunt. So how's this affected you, Michelle?
It's a hit and miss, because I found that the first week I went really hard with it. I had like one or 2 every single day, which is nice. But then it gets to a point where, like Marcos was saying, like you get to a point where I think people have done interviews easily 5+ times before you came along, and they feel a bit drained. It's a bit regurgitated because there's really not much to talk about. We're all kind of asking the same questions, rightfully so, and then it's like, There's just something about that one-on-one interaction that really works well, especially when you have a good rapport with the fighter, that people like to see. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit different. It's kind of like, do you know when we're interviewing somebody and then we have to use a translator, and there's just like that barrier where it just doesn't quite work the same as someone that you'd be interviewing that speaks your same language or maybe even has like a good sense of humor? It's the same thing. So it is challenging. But I am optimistic, and that's just by nature. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that when it does come down to, like Marcos was saying, the selective media, that the ones that actually do this for a living are considered on that list, as opposed to some who do this occasionally on the weekends for fun because they can show up to events normally and pull out their camera and just start asking questions. So my hope is that the relationships that we forged over the years with the promoters and the networks, that they will help us survive this pandemic, because ultimately it's going to come down to the promoters pushing for us. Are they going to have our back the way we've had theirs over the years, covering all their small, tiny cards and doing the interviews with the guys that drive no traffic, but you're doing it because, you know, everybody's sort of helping each other out. Everyone has to start somewhere. So my hope is that the promoters, maybe they might hear this, you know, they'll remember that. Like, remember how hard we've worked over the years. And right now we need you to throw us a bone. We need to survive. We need to pay our bills. We need to be able to sustain being able to show up. I don't do this for fun. I rely very heavily. My rent, my car, my insurances, everything depends on an interview. So let's see what the promoters do for us, like we've done for them over the years.
Good luck with that one.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just being honest. I mean, I know you guys are all agreeing. I mean, there's nothing to disagree in that. It's just, let's hope and see. Let's hope and see that they have our back the way we've had theirs over the years. And I'm talking years. I think it's safe to say we've all been doing this. I think I'm the newest of us all. So I've been doing this close to 9 years. Actually, 9 years. So it's not like I just started yesterday. We're talking about we've been in this industry 9+ years. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
but Michelle, they don't care. They don't give a shit about whether or not you pay your rent or whether or not you have a staff or how long you've been doing this.
That's why I'm saying let's wait and see.
You know what we should do? Even though it wouldn't really matter. And you know, KUGAN's here. Once again, thank you for bringing us on. It's a whole different dynamic here in the United States than it is in the UK for people watching this and stuff like that. Completely different dynamic than it is over there. We should like group together and be like, yo, if you don't give us these things, we're not covering your event. I'm sorry. We're peacing out. Like
a YouTube union, yeah.
You know?
The reality of it is they take our coverage for granted in the best of times.
Super.
They have the most excuse now
because they sort of took the molds that we've created. Remember how none of us gave a shit about YouTube, and all of a sudden they all have YouTube accounts and they're all doing the same interviews we've been doing over the years. So they sort of took the molds that we've created and like, hey, we have the financial backing. Let's just create our own. So I'm hoping they don't alienate us, because that is sort of what it's starting to look like. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, you want the footage? Like, don't forget when no one was showing up to your cards. Like, because I can name them to you. More than that.
Yeah, I don't know who these people are you're talking about. They're not our friends. They're not like, their job is not to be fair or to remember all of our hard times. Like, the reality is we are boxed into a shitty situation, and the more they can take control over the message, take control over what their fighters put out in public, and if they can harness the views that we've worked so hard to create a platform for fight fans to constantly watch and support the sport, they're going to take it over. They're not going to piece it out like, yo, you've been doing this for 9 years, you've been doing this for 20 years, what a great piece of work you've done for us in the past. They're like, thanks for building the house, get out, we're going to move into it now. And if you don't have access directly to fighters, you're not going to get like the soundbite that nobody else is getting. You're not going to break a story. You're not going to have access to ask questions that the promoter doesn't want asked. Like, I'm nobody's favorite. Everybody knows that, obviously, because I always ask the question that nobody wants asked. I'm always tenacious about it. I don't expect these people to be my friends or do me any favors. And as soon as they don't have to, guess what? They're not going to do any of you any favors either. So I think Marcos is right. If you want to like have a say in this industry or any industry, especially if you're media, you have to grow some balls and like band together and be like, yo, we actually have a platform that fans listen to, that fans expect journalism from. We've all proven ourselves as legitimate journalists. And if you think you can replace journalism with promotion, if a promoter can be the one asking the questions, then there's no journalism in the sport whatsoever. And we have to say, we won't participate in that. If they say, oh, radio, you can come to the event, but Marcos can't, and Michelle can't, and KUGAN can, and then next time it's Michelle can, and Marcos can, and radio and KUGAN can't, and we all play that game, they'll play us against each other. And it's going to be a ton of bullshit. And the press will cease to exist. It'll just be promoter propaganda.
So today I spoke to Eddie Hearn, and we all seen Eddie Hearn's plans to put obviously events on at the Matchroom headquarters. And within the plans, there is a section there, which I asked him about today, which was set out for media. Yeah. But I think he's looking to do 4 shows starting on July the 18th, back to back, ending in White and Povetkin. But I think the bottom line is, obviously, I did have to ask him about where does it leave guys like myself, and not just me, but the writers and every other form of media, being allowed to come to these events. And he said that he doesn't know. And I think the truth of the matter is that the media isn't crucial to the event going on. So they're going to minimize the amount of people going. For example, do you need to be there? Well, this can't happen without me. Okay, then you're going. KUGAN, do you really need to be there? No, I don't need to be there. I want to be there. So there's a difference. So all these events that are coming on, and even the ones that Bob Aaron's talking about in the US next month, you don't know whether you're going to be allowed to. Obviously, I won't be travelling over there. But even the ones in the UK, Eddie Hearn's already said things like, even if you are there, interviews are going to be done on Zoom. So they're going to be in a room, you're going to be in a room. You might be on the same complex if I'm allowed to go. But it's not a given that I'm allowed to go to these things or whoever's allowed to go to these things. So the media side of it, especially for the show starting, is very much a 50-50 thing whether it will be allowed to go to it. That's how it's going to work in the UK.
Yeah, we're in a unique situation because obviously if you're a writer, you don't have to be at the event. You could watch the event from home and write your story about it and then make a phone call and grab your little quote or whatever. Obviously for us, it's completely different because we're running around getting content at events and providing event coverage. But you know, during this time, I even thought like, okay, if I was a promoter, would I let media like come to my event? Because at events, there's usually like 20, 30 media. And I'm like, man, from a risk management point of view, I'd be like, hell no, I'm not going to let 20, 30 random people. Like that's just too dangerous given like this time. Like you can't control that many people. So it's like, well, if you can't open it up to some and not open it up to all, you know? So what's the way where you make everyone happy? X everybody out, do everything online, which is, you know, I thought about it and then I saw the UFC doing it. I'm like, okay, well, that's the trend. It's usually the first person that does it sets a trend, others will follow. And we're seeing that now that if he's talking about doing that, then yeah, that makes sense, which is a worry for all of us because we all want our one-on-ones. And if we're getting all the same stuff and they open this thing to everybody, it's going to be a shit show. It's going to be a free-for-all in terms of getting stuff out. And it puts us in a really, really weird situation. But it gets back to what I mentioned earlier. The only way for us to be able to get our one-on-ones is if we do them via Zoom after the event.
Mm-hmm.
I think a crucial mistake that we're making in allowing this conversation to be had in a vacuum with promoters and networks is that press observation is not essential. These are combat sports. We're not just getting one-on-ones. Like we all have platforms that give the fighters, the promoters, the trainers an opportunity to speak and give their perspective. But I would say even more importantly than that aspect of the content is to have eyewitness accounts that are objective, that aren't tethered to the promoter, that aren't tethered to the network, that don't have a conflict of interest as to say what we actually saw with our own eyes, what happened at the event, were rules followed, were they not followed? If we see something that's awry, we're the ones who ask the question. If there's something that happens off camera that should be reported on, that has been observed by an objective observer, that's us. That's what the press is. Yeah, UFC, when basketball comes back, when football comes back, you think they're not going to have any press? Of course they are. I understand making a way to do it that isn't putting people unnecessarily at risk. I get that. But I see the press no less essential than the officials. I see the press no less essential than the people who are functioning as part of the event itself, the referee, we're part of this community, and we are the only ones that are objectively reporting on what happens outside the view of the camera, that gets the perspective of the fighter before he is told by the promoter what to say, or before that cut gets stitched up, you can see how bad it is, or what happens in the corner that maybe wasn't heard on the mic. That's what the press is. We're not just megaphones and FaceTime for fighters to get interviews. We're there to report to the fans what has actually occurred and then ask questions relevant to that. So for promoters to be like, oh, well, we don't need the press, we're not an essential function of the event, I think it's bullshit, and it's something that we're like buying into that is a false premise.
it's bullshit, but boxing's a funny business. I could totally see it because I've seen press members turned away before from events, and their excuse is, we're a private company. This is like a private party. We could choose to credential you or not credential you. And I've seen that spill over before with people and stuff like that. So I'm not saying it gives them the right to, but I've seen them use that excuse before with this kind of stuff. And I agree with everything that you said in terms of, I feel we are essential, but it all comes back to here's another thing we haven't even touched on. Like, do we feel even comfortable going to these events?
Hell
Like,
yeah.
me for one, you know, like.
Hell yeah, I'm comfortable.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I'm not in grocery stores without masks. You don't have to wear them out here where I'm at. You don't. I feel completely comfortable being out back and around people. 100%, not even a question asked. At what point did this, waiting for the curve turn into waiting for the cure?
Yeah,
like,
yo,
are
it's
we
a
gonna
risk
wait
that
for the
you.
cure? Like, are we serious? No, seriously. Like, are we waiting for some miraculous cure? We don't even a cure for flu or HIV, but we're supposed to find one for COVID in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year? Like, we have to accept the fact that going to work, we're going to potentially be at risk at some point. Anytime we leave to our grocery store, we are at risk. We go to the gas station, we are at risk. We go to church, we're at risk. It doesn't matter, no matter where you're at. Like, for example, I went through a drive-through McDonald's the other day. I'm just going to throw this out there because this is common sense. They had like that thing, that barrier. And when she stuck her hands under, she took my plastic credit card with her hands, swiped it, and gave it back. Now, mind you, supposedly COVID lives on plastic for 3 whole days. She wasn't wearing gloves, and if she was, she'd have to change her gloves with every transaction. What was the barrier for? No reason. My point is that we are always going to be at risk, much like the flu. When you show up to work and you're not feeling good, you shouldn't have shown up. You shouldn't have shown up. You should not have shown up. My point is, it's like, I respect the guidelines right now where I'm at. You don't have to wear a mask. We're all fine. Everyone's chilling. But at the end of the day, it's like, how long are we really going to, are we seriously going to wait on Gates's vaccine? Are we really going to go that far out before we get back to work? No, seriously, it's a real conversation to have, because if that's the case, like, I might be wasting my time. There may not even be a return for me.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious, because you can only sustain this for so long, really. We have livelihoods. Right now, the government's quote-unquote helping. Great, but what happens when that help runs out? My business is completely collapsed.
You bring up a good point, though. I think a lot of fans don't know this. Is if we don't work events, we don't make money.
At all.
Yeah, so, I understand your point, Michelle. Like, Fox has told me that they're going to bring fights back pretty soon. And my whole thing is, I want to see that they have proper protocols in place to keep me safe. Not for me, even though it would suck if I got sick, but I see my mom a lot. My mom has a lot of medical conditions, and I don't want anything happening to my mom, and a lot of the times people don't even know they're sick. So, that's my concern as well is, and the other thing is, like, how are they, with so many people, like, I take very good care of myself with all this, but can I trust the other person that they're being responsible as well? You don't know. Everybody's taking this differently based on what they see and what they believe in.
We can't hide forever. We cannot hide forever. That's just a fact.
No, I'm not saying hide. I'm not saying hide. I'm not saying hide forever. I'm just saying I want to see that they have proper protocols in place.
Well, obviously, given the situation, they're going through great lengths to make sure that we're all very, very much distanced. So, at the end of the day, you can't hide from it. So my thing is this: I respect people who don't want to return, but I need people to respect the decision for people who want to return. Like, we want to get back, and I want to get back. And at the end of the day, each of us individually own companies. that we have spent every dollar we've had building it. I mean, it's just so much. And then for what? Once my benefits run out from the United States, I'm homeless. I can't pay my bills because nothing's changed.
At the risk of sounding redundant, I would lean on the argument that this is a calling. I'm not going to work off the sympathy of others, certainly not promoters. They're not going to care about that. But the people who do care about you are the people who follow you, follow your content, support you. The reason you're making money is because people are constantly watching your videos and watching your content and appreciating what you produce. Those are also the people that are buying pay-per-views, that are subscribing to these channels, that are supporting the sport financially. Those are the people who need to support us and say that our access is essential and journalism is a calling. Like, I don't mind this being a strainer, if you will, to weed out the people who are like full of shit, that don't do this as a profession, that don't see this as a calling, that aren't willing to like spend their money, spend their time on a consistent basis to deliver quality content. There should be way less people covering boxing, so the people who are good at it and serious about it and dedicated to it have the time to do it properly in an environment that's conducive and productive, instead of trying to like elbow guys out of the way who you've never seen before and argue with motherfuckers who have like 100 followers. Instead, how about the promoters use this as an opportunity to, as you say, observe those of us who are actually in a profession and producing content of value, and let the fans support us in this stance that we are essential, and then do our actual jobs maybe better than we've ever had an opportunity to do it, because now only those of us who do it properly will have the opportunity to do it in the first place. That's the place I'm coming from. That's what promoters and networks need to support, but most importantly, that's what the fans have to back us on. Because if they don't, promoters and networks aren't going to give a shit about that. That's not something that they consider to be essential to their aspect. If we're willing to sit at home and just take what they give us and report on what they say happened at the fight, then all we are just little mini promoters. This is 4 boxes of little mini match rooms, little mini top ranks, little mini golden boys. We might as well stop calling ourselves journalists. And we might as well get out here and just start, like, skateboarding on the corner and shooting that for YouTube. And we don't get
skateboard videos.
Yeah, they do very well, but you might as well start shooting skateboard videos.
At this point, I'm gonna have to start doing my news updates in bikinis to start making money. Cause damn.
All right, settle down. Let's keep it fair. I tried to free the nipple at the beginning of this conversation. Nobody wanted to do it.
Because it's just it's getting rough. It's getting rough these days.
Do you know? I was doing a podcast recently with Matthew Macklin, and he asked me about if this was to run for, say, a 6-month period, where does it kind of leave YouTube boxing? And what I said to him is what I think now, and it's kind of touching on what Rahim just said there, that in 6 months' time, all our channels, so Fight Hub, Behind the Gloves, Seconds Out, will notice a dip in revenue, in numbers, etc., etc. But apart from kind of the top tier channels from America and also the UK, the majority of the channels won't really be affected because they dip in and out of the sport, cover only the big events anyway. So they could probably just pick up wherever it starts off again. Whereas us, we put on content daily, multiple times during fight week, and our channels are overactive. But that's a very small percentage of the YouTube boxing channels that actually do this as a job. Everyone else that has it as a hobby, and fair play to them if that's what they want to do, but everyone else won't get affected by this because, say this does last 6 months, a year, that's fine. They'll just pick it up and be exactly where they were pre-COVID.
Because they had a full-time job to begin with. Like, they were just sort of doing it on the weekends casually for free for somebody.
Because it's not their profession. I mean, listen, God bless, like, everybody trying to do their best, but if we're just going to have an honest conversation, how about the PR people take this opportunity to do their job a little better, give us an opportunity to do our job a little better? Like, let's just take this time for everybody to improve, get a chance to take a look at what we were doing. Maybe that wasn't the best way to do it, and weed out the people who are not actually media. Having a cell phone, being able to open a YouTube channel with your computer does not make you a member of the press. knowing who's fighting doesn't make you a journalist. Like the idea you can sign up on a piece of paper when you show up at an event or apply online doesn't mean you're qualified to cover the event. So by now, PR people should know the difference between some like weekend warrior who's turning up to try to get a free fight ticket and talk to their favorite fighter, and people who are actually professional journalists covering the sport and doing a job at it that's essential. Let's weed out the bullshit and let's make this like boxing journalism a real thing. Like everybody that's on this call is qualified. We've made this a real thing. The people who haven't are the PR people. Those are the people who like don't distinguish between one YouTube channel and another. They're the people who credential too many so-called journalists. Like I get that 30 people is too many, but you probably only need 10 of them anyway. And then let those other channels piggyback off our stories like they do when we have good ones in the first place, and earn your keep, earn your medal, like earn a position to be covering fights.
Rahim, I'm just going to throw a counter to this, and I do agree with the majority of what you're saying. Won't people argue, though, the place where those starting out and the guys with 100 followers or starting off on that phone, at some point, that was us?
Yeah, but you know what? I remember being dicked around all the time, trying to like, oh, wait in line. You're not getting an interview this time. 30 people back, waiting in line to maybe get a clip. Like, I remember those days. And to be fair, I respect, because look we all did start there at some point, right? But there was a time, and I'm not going to list a name, but there was a top tier fighter who was doing an interview. The publicist did not stop it. It went 10 minutes. We were very limited on time to begin with. It went 10 minutes, and the guy has less than 100 subscribers. And out of curiosity, and I didn't get an interview at all, mind you, because I was 2 people behind that person, behind the next person up. So long story short, just out of curiosity, I'm like, okay, he spent 10 minutes with this guy. The fighter doesn't know any different. He doesn't know who that person's video is for half the time. So what happened was, I happened to check that video because I wanted to know what traffic this guy was going to do. And the guy got 30 views. 10 minutes of the fighter's time went for 30 views. And some of us that were still stuck in line didn't get any. And so back to that, to answer your question, we've all been there, Kugan. You know that. We weren't given interviews all the time. We had to fight for it behind the networks and the people who were hired through the promoters.
Well, let me interject this. You're absolutely right, Kugan. And that's how it should be. What job, what profession, at what top tier of any industry does the guy in the mailroom have the same office as the guy as the CEO or the vice president? You have to work your way up. You know the difference between us and everybody else who started with 100 followers or 100 views? We did something to distinguish ourselves. We either started creating quality content when we were originally creating shit, or created a style that was needed or appreciated, and we started to leave the herd. I'm not saying don't give other people opportunities, but your opportunities come when opportunities present themselves. Right now, it's slim pickings. There's not enough meat to go around. We're not feeding everybody who just has a watering mouth. We've earned a place at the table. Give me my plate. I'm sorry if there's people outside, like when you're at a restaurant and you see a bum walking by, it's like, you know what? There was a time when I was hungry. Doesn't mean I invite him in to eat my meal. You know what I mean? Like, I will happily give opportunity to those who are diligent and figure out a way to separate themselves from the herd and take what opportunities they have and make the most of them. That's what I did. That's what all of us did. And that's what they have to do. So the difference is we're all being treated like the same, and we're not the same.
You know, I think boxing's the only sport, and again, this is subjective how you look at this, but anyone can literally, off one of these, decide on any given day that they want to cover boxing, and they can be accredited to a boxing, whether that be a press conference, an event. And I'm not saying that specifically that's wrong, but I'm saying that's a lot to do with how accessible the sport is for a start. But again, all of us here have been in it. I mean, Michelle, 9 years. Rahim, how long? 12, 13 years you've been doing this?
Me?
Yeah.
20.
All right, you're probably the oldest out of all of us. That's why
You're damn straight I am. Yeah, that's why.
I'm
That's
talking
why I
about
talk the way
YouTube
I
boxing.
do.
Raheem, I'm talking about specifically YouTube boxing. How long have you been doing it?
Oh, well, I was doing it like when there was no YouTube boxing, it was just like websites and whatnot. Like,
Okay.
so, yeah, I don't even remember when YouTube kicked into becoming a thing. But like, we started with Max Boxing, Steve Kim, and Doug Fisher. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, YouTube is a platform. YouTube is not an industry of journalism. It's a platform, right? So
I'll rephrase online media. Online media.
Yeah, I'm saying like 20 years, man. Like I was a teenager in wild card boxing gyms shooting sparring sessions with James Toney. Like I was a teenager taking my video camera around to La Brea and Wilshire shooting Klitschko's. Like at La Brea Boxing. Like before any of this shit was a thing. I was doing it. That's not like something I made up. You can still find that footage online. Like that's where Doug started. That's where Steve Kim started. And that's where I started. That's how long I've been doing this. I've seen the ebbs and flows. I've seen YouTube blow up. I've seen the difference between what boxing media used to be and what it is now. And also the attitudes of PR people then and now. Back in those days, believe it or not, I believe we were more appreciated then than now. Like that's why I'm saying I'm not trying to shit on like a rookie or an upstart or somebody that really wants to make this their profession, but you have to actually do it. Like the desire to do it, having your cell phone, knowing who the main event are, and maybe 3 fights down, like you can pronounce everybody's name, doesn't qualify you. Like start covering fights that you have access to because we're not there. The four of us, like all of like the top tier media isn't going to be at everything. Cover the smaller fights, the medium-sized fights. Make your opportunities, separate yourself from the herd, and build a career. But why did we build a career and a platform and an audience so that we could just hand it over to anybody that can write a headline on YouTube and it's considered equal footing? That's not how it works, man. Like that's not how it works.
Marcos,
I respect people's ambition. I respect their wanting to do the same thing. That's not even like, I'm not even dismissing that. I'm just saying, like, looking at it from the perspective of people who've invested so much time, made so many sacrifices, all the years we've spent away from family and friends, lost relationships, we've put our work in. And you're damn right. It's a bit frustrating when you're standing in a line and you're not prioritized to some degree. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. In some cases it does, but I'm saying that there comes a time, like you put your time in, you put your work in, and then you get that respect, right? The fighters suddenly want to do interviews with you, and then they start, you build that rapport. But it does come with time, and I just think that with people like us who have businesses to build and keep afloat, like if you're fans of ours, if you love the product that we produce, it's relied heavily right now on you continuing to support us. And I've always said I'm very grateful for the fans. I wouldn't be where I'm at without them. I understand that, but it is so important to, like you're saying with publicists, to prioritize. Like you have to understand, like we're not doing this for fun. I don't decide to, pull out a camera and do it just for the sake of just doing it. I'm doing it because I need to pay my bills, and I want to continue to go in the direction of my career that I've built from the ground up. You're damn right I want to continue that. But, you're going to need people to pull their weight as well and help you.
Marcos, you have been doing this how long?
I think 11 years.
11 years. So,
yeah.
I mean, look, combined, we've got, 50 years here of some sort of experience within.
Yeah, and how many millions of views? How many stories broken? How many moments that the audience would have never seen were it not for us on the beat and knowing which questions to ask when and putting ourselves in the room maybe we're not even supposed to be in, just buying those plane tickets, like being dedicated to this profession. And I know I'm saying the same thing over and over again. I just can't say it enough though. Forget about the violin. Like no one cares. We're producing something of value, and we're an essential part of the sport. That's the argument. If the fans appreciate what it is that we produce and consider it necessary and essential, then they have to voice that. And our argument to the promoters and networks is that this is something that is required when you have a combat sport. Objective observers. You have to have people of the press there to say what happened that isn't filtered through the network's best interest, the promoter's best interest, and sometimes not even the fighter's best interest. Like, especially if even fans aren't there, I would say we're more essential now than ever. And either this is a profession and we're doing something for real or not.
If the issue is social distancing, and we're in, let's just say for the sake of an arena, there's a lot of space for the media to be spread out in. Okay?
I'll still put it for the nosebleeds.
Either way, if that means
if they put you in the nosebleeds now, then you really know they don't like you. Then you really know they don't like you. If they're doing it now, when they have a whole freaking arena, yeah.
Yeah,
it's like, that doesn't make any sense why you wouldn't have the media spread out enough. Like, there's more than enough space to sustain that. And especially if you're selective in terms of like, okay, we're going to bring in X amount of people, so many writers, so many with the network, obviously, so many who have their own shows like we do. Like, there has to be some sort of balance there. We can't just completely be written out and saying, hey guys, just stay home and we're going to do the interviews like this forever. Like, it's just not fair.
Over the last 10, 20 years, because Rahim's on 20 years, we've all established very, very good relationships with people within the boxing industries, and that's not specific to boxers, that's people, promoters, managers, etc., etc. And I've been personally criticised for having some of those relationships and possibly using those relationships to my advantage. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. So where do we stand on this then? I mean, I've said this to you, Michelle, in the past before, I'm never ever going to apologise for my relationship that I've built with someone in boxing. And if that means that I got an interview before, I'm not talking about in a queue situation, but I'm just saying I got an interview in a lockdown situation and someone else didn't because of my relationship. I'm never ever going to apologise for that, because I don't think you should apologise for that. But I know I've been criticised. Michelle, I know you've been criticised in the past because of your relationships with fighters, obviously on a plutonic level. But where do we stand on it? Now, you know what I mean. Just because you get on with a fighter and they might be more
just clarify.
No, just to clarify. Yeah, Rahim, you're the same. I've been
also my relationships with all fighters have been platonic. I just want that on the record.
Marcos has been quiet in the corner, so yeah. But Rahim, I've been there before where, we'll be in a room and a fighter will see you in America and it will be like, Rahim, yeah, I've got to do Rahim. I've seen it with you, Michelle, as well. Everyone's got their people in boxing that you've established relationships with. So why should you be criticised, or why should you feel guilty because you've put the work in to kind of establish those relationships?
You shouldn't.
I think it goes to what we've just been talking about. The relationships are established over time, over a consistent delivery of valued content, over a consistent level of professionalism. Like, they don't just get on with you. It's like, oh, I like the cut of his jib. No, I know that this guy is professional. These questions maybe I haven't heard before. They're worth answering because he has an audience that's listening. I want to talk to the people on his or her platform, so this interview is worth doing. Like, that's the part that makes a difference. The relationships that you have, at least the ones that I have, I don't hang out with fighters. Like, they're not personal relationships. I don't really have friends that are active fighters that I like kick it with, or like any of that. I'm not shit on a guy who does it. Like, if that's what you do, that's what you do. But I know when they want to talk to me, it's not because, we were at the pub last night and I'm not going to tell his wife what happened. It's because he respects my work, and that's it. And sometimes they don't even want to talk to me, but know that they should, because there are questions that they want that need to be answered that no one else is going to ask. Everybody, each one of us has our like own little niche. People follow and watch our respective channels for different reasons. I like to think that part of the reason people watch mine is because I ask tough questions, because sometimes I make it awkward, because sometimes the question that no one else is willing to ask but should be asked, I'm willing to ask and get in trouble with the PR person or piss off the fighter or I don't get like criticized, I get ostracized. Like promoters don't want me in that room because they don't want those questions asked. And if we're okay with that, all of a sudden the only questions that are going to be asked by Eddie Hearn or Bob Arum or Oscar De La Hoya, then we don't have a profession. And this is not a thing. This isn't a real thing that we're doing. That's what I do. And that's why I have these relationships. They're based on my work. So if you want to have those kind of relationships or you want the fighter to call you out or be put to the front of the queue, then get a body of work that warrants that. You know what I'm saying? Or, put on a bikini.
Oh. Marcos?
If push might come to shove one day. Push might come to shove.
Marcos,
Don't be surprised, nor don't be offended because a girl's just trying to pay her bills.
Like the interviews that I've gotten during this time haven't been because of the PR people. It's because
relationships.
I tried to go to the PR people and I got the runaround. So I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm going to contact these guys directly. And then I started getting interviews and it got me thinking.
Know why? Because the PR people probably aren't even on retainer right now. So everybody's like, screw that, I ain't working for free right now.
It's a good point, So it's this has happened to me in the past where I've gotten interviews and the PR person will be like, Marcos, what the fuck are you doing? Why'd you get that interview? Like, you didn't go through me. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't go through you because you would have told me no. And the fighter told me yes. So what's the problem here? Happened more in MMA than in boxing, to be honest. I got in a big old issue with the UFC over doing stuff like that. And it really pissed them off, which is a big reason why I don't even want to deal in that sport anymore. But, especially during this time, it's like you look at all the other industries and how are they getting their content. Obviously, the guys at the top tier have an established rapport with athletes or participants in the sport because of the years and years that they've covered the sport. And people like us, when we go into a room and they see us, they know like, hey, this guy is going to be impartial. This guy is going to be objective. And I know we've all gotten it. And I've been told by many, many fighters, Marcos, I always know you're going to be fair to me. And I think that's attributed to the work that we put in and the questions that we ask and the approach that we give. So, no, I don't think because you're having a relationship with a fighter, like you should be ostracized or criticized for being able to do an interview, especially even now when people aren't really like wanting to do interviews and stuff like that. You got to use those relationships now. Other people have better relationships than like other people, as well. But I think overall, like the example that I just mentioned, my relationships have gotten me the interviews. If I go through the proper channels, I don't get anything. And if I don't get anything, I don't make any money.
Right. Yeah. The PR people feel like it's an adversarial relationship, like they're the gatekeepers and somehow we're the enemy. I think that relationship needs to change too. I mean, maybe my attitude can change a little bit and their attitude can change a little bit, and we should start working together to make the best opportunities for the people who deserve them. But to your point, Kugan, and I know the kind of criticism you're talking about, and I think even between us at times, like, it's like, oh, well, this is my turf, I should talk to this guy first, whatever. That's a legitimate, like, professional tension. But when Manny Pacquiao came to Los Angeles, like, to wildcard for the first time, like I said, I'm a teenager. Like, in the afternoons, knocking off, going straight to the gym with my little, like, DV cam and shooting Manny Pacquiao, who was nobody at the time, and hanging out with him and getting all this, like, footage that's now, like, classic footage that they bootleg in the Philippines like it's a classic film. I was doing that, like high school age. When I started to really focus on UK boxing and had to bone up, like get to know not just Anthony Joshua and Dylan White, the guys that everybody knows, but the guys that are going to be on the undercard. I was watching KUGAN CASSIUS videos. Like, the guy had been doing it long enough to where I could take a ton of his videos and see what these fighters were about, what their storylines were about, what their attitudes were like. And based on his work for 10 years before I ever went over to the UK to cover boxing, I was able to do a better job. So KUGAN is valuable. That time means something. There's a reason why he should be included. And sometimes those fighters that 10 years ago were nobody he was talking to, and now they're world champions and main event fighters want to talk to him first. It makes sense. I can't hold a grudge on that. I mean, I would be doing a less good job if he hadn't been doing his job many years ago. I think the same is true for me with a lot of these American fighters. The same is true for the guys who are coming up now watching Marcos. Like, women in this, I didn't know any women really covering boxing on YouTube. And then Michelle like made a big splash. Now there's like at least 4 or 5 I can name off the top of my head. Yo, you owe some kind of like at least tip of the hat and acknowledgement that people have earned their spots and are doing a valuable service to the boxing community.
Rahim, what you just said there is how it should be, and that's how we all kind of think about that situation, because we've all at some point, like I said, established relationships, etc., etc. But there are, and I'm not going to start slagging any outlets off, but there are YouTube channels out there that are not concentrating on what they're doing. They're more concentrating on what I'm doing or what you're doing or what you're doing. And I know, because I've heard, because obviously a lot of people in boxing talk to me, and a lot of people in boxing come to me, whether they be PR people, media people, where people go and complain. You know, why have they got this? And why did they get that interview? And why did they get that access? Or why is he allowed to do that? I've had that for years. Michelle, you know what I'm saying is true, because I still get it now to a certain degree. Not as much, but I still get it now. People, other outlets, going and complaining because maybe I got backstage or something. Rahim, you're the king of fucking getting into like areas that you're not meant to be or you shouldn't be, or because that's what you do. Michelle, look at that interview you did with Tyson Fury at the end of the Wilder fight, where you're like trying to pull Mel through the crowd, and you're having to, and I'm glad you left all that in, because people actually see it's not a case of like people think that you're standing there in front of Tyson Fury and there's like a fucking film set where you've got a makeup girl quickly doing it. No, it's a long night. You're literally dragging your camera girl through the crowd where someone's stepping on your way. You're arguing with everyone, but this is how it is. This is what it actually is. That was a good little 2 minutes of things you have to go through. And I'm not asking for people to go, oh, poor you. I'm just saying that that's how it is. It's not, things aren't given to us even now, even after 50 years of experience, things are not given to us on a plate. And we're not, and I always say that we're not really entitled to shit. We're not entitled to anything. I don't sit here go, Joshua should do an interview with me because, you know, we're IFL and we've been covering Joshua for 10 years. We're not entitled to shit. We have to graft and hunt and go through the same things that we did 5 years ago in the present day. Rahim, I know you know that too, because you... Like I said,
if anything, it gets harder the more famous they become. It doesn't get easier. It gets harder. It's like you have these relationships with people, but it still doesn't matter at that point, because now they got bigger teams, more managers, more all these things, and then it becomes challenging. So it is a constant graft. It's not like, hey, just show up and this is what it is. You know, don't get me wrong. Some people might say so. They might be like, oh, well, you always get that. I'm still standing in line like everybody else. Like, it's not like an announcer kind of, hey, Michelle Phelps, where are you? Come to the front of the line. It's not like that at all. It's like, still got to wait, still got to do your thing. You still get a limited of time, rush. And then that's when you use your relationships to say, hey, can I get a little extra time? Can I get an interview? And then that's where you get your exclusives, because you can't get crap in 2 minutes. It's impossible.
Well, sometimes it is like, hey, Marcos, come to the front of the line. Hey, KUGAN, why are you back there? Let's go. I'll do you after KUGAN. Like, it should be like that sometimes.
Like that. My point is, it's not like that. Listen, occasionally, you will get a touch. Like, I've been in offer queue before, and the PR people have said, "Oh, it's KUGAN IFL, come up to the stage." We've all had that at some point, and when we get it, it's fucking rare, but I'll take it.
Right.
I'll take it. You might piss off the rest of the people, but if the PR people, whoever's in charge of the interview, are calling you up, and I wouldn't blame any of you for taking it either. It's like,
right. My point is, when that does happen, and it is rare, but when it does happen, it should occasionally, like every day shouldn't have to be a knife fight. And when Michelle is like fighting through, I watched her do it, like exactly what you're talking about. I watched her do it. I was like, man, I knew it was going to work. But the point is, even though for those 2 minutes, sometimes more like 30 seconds or 90 seconds, the fighter might say something epic. Like he might give the entire boxing world just a moment that is worth all of the effort she went through to get that moment. And nobody appreciates what it is like to get those 90 seconds and not know when you're going to get that moment, or you're just going to say something like totally useless to a certain degree, and you just have to do it again the next time. The point is, we're making history. Those moments live forever. No matter what he says, Michelle will have gotten the only comment that he made leaving the arena that night in that moment. The last thing he said to anybody, he said on her camera. So people who follow boxing, who make these memes, who argue about every syllable a fighter says, who want access, we're your access. So like, fuck the promoters and networks. They're not gonna go to bat for us. But if the fans do, they'll respect that.
It is what the fans are all about, and it's true. And we don't probably say it enough. I know, obviously, we're without people kind of supporting and criticising, watching, good or bad, whatever it is. It's the reason why we're allowed to do what we do, and that's probably the most important aspect of what we do.
Oh, 100%. I'm always saying that. I'm like, I was just a girl with, I started as an intern. I was just kind of like, hey, let me see what this is all about. Get to sit ringside and watch my favorite sport right there. Let's do it. I don't have to be at home watching it on TV. Like, it literally would not be where I'm at if I did not have people, whether they love to slag me off or love me. Regardless, they watch the videos, and I'm just like you guys, super appreciative of that, because it made our passion and our dreams reality. But again, it's super crucial to have their support during this time, because we don't know where 6 months is going to take us. We have no idea. None. Not trying to say too much here, but like, when you have employees, how much longer can you pay to keep everybody on board when you're making significant dips? Seriously. And that concerns me when I think about things like that. It does.
And not even to mention too, sponsor dollars are not what they were.
Nope. Because advertising rates are low.
Exactly. Advertising rates are lower. People are losing sponsors. Like, it's a weird time, and it changes the business dynamic of not just this sport, but all sports in general.
I like to think that we're going to end up back somewhere near normalcy, or what we used to think was normal. Like, yeah, we may go through this tunnel of darkness for a year, maybe even 18 months, but I think society, sports, all this shit is going to work its way back to some
for sure. I believe that we're going to come back. We're going to come back. It just might take a little bit to get back to what it was, but we are going to come back, because everything's on pause. It's not like it stopped. Like, these companies went out of business because of bad fiscal management and bad people heading logistics and all that. It went on pause because of what happened. It's on pause right now. It's on standby. Once this shit passes, it's going to come back full steam. Now, what the business landscape is going to be, it's going to be completely different. Obviously, there is going to be some companies that go under, but not because of this, but because of bad fiscal policy that they had. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I've remained in this perspective that everything's going to come back to normal, but it might take a little bit longer, or or more delayed than what we're comfortable with, but we will get back to normalcy.
Well, I hope the new normal is better than the old normal. If we get back to normal being just exactly like it was before, then we wasted an opportunity.
Back to the line, 2 questions, yo. Like, no, fucking A.
So I think, again, now is our opportunity collectively as a boxing community, not just the 4 of us on this call, but the fans, the people who are not on this call who also could meet the standards that we're talking about, that we insist coming out of this, we have learned something. We have long enough to change and kind of reset relationships and standards, like the way things are done. Let's do it better. Let's use this time instead of just be abused by the time. We can actually come out on the other end better. I don't think, no matter what was going on in boxing, if there was no corona, that the 4 of us would be on a call agreeing about shit. So there we go. We've made the world a little bit of a better kumbaya place today. Let's keep like some kind of unity going and make the situation better for all of us collectively. And by doing that, we'll make what we give the fans way more valuable on the back end of this whole thing. Like, I think that should be our goal. And it's an essential one.
You would think, yeah, with everyone supposedly having nothing to do, that it would be easier to obtain people's time in this lockdown to do interviews. But it's absolutely fucking not. Because
it's the same difference as me wanting to put pants on or sweatpants on. It's like you choose to either not want to do absolutely anything with your day, or you're choosing to do everything that you can with your day. So right now, mentally, it depends on where people are at. Do you know what I mean? Like, some people don't want to do anything.
People, like, you go in wanting to be productive, and then you check out, and then you go in and you check out. It's like waves, and then it comes back to the point that I brought up in the beginning. What the hell are we going to talk about? There's nothing going on. Everything that's been talked about has already been talked about. What am I going to ask you? What you ate for breakfast, for lunch? How much you're drinking? Like, what color is your pants? Like, what the hell are we going to talk about? These hypothetical fantasy matches? That's already been played out. Like to me, I've gotten to a point where it's like, I don't want to do interviews right now. I'd rather be concentrating on other creative stuff, because, like, honestly, what is there to talk about? There's like, I don't know. I'm a guy that something has to interest me. I have to be passionate about something for me to get the desire to want to do it, you know, and there ain't shit going on right now.
The same for the fighters. The fighters, what do they have to talk about? They're probably doing the same thing, and they probably already did 2 interviews before yours where they talked about their life story and they got tired of repeating themselves. It's the same difference. So I'm really, really hoping that this whole Zoom thing doesn't extend past what it should extend. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, that they don't drag this out.
I feel like it will for a little while.
Well, we could wear those little plastic face masks. You know.
Do you know what?
Way?
you got obviously talking about how we're obtaining content, and I suppose the majority of the content that we're getting, we are actually speaking to the people we want to speak to ourselves.
Let me give you props. First off, Kugan, like, Andrew's been putting in work for you, man. That guy's been getting interviews left and right, and he's been doing a good job.
Not as many as Danny Flexen, who is currently on number 89 of the lockdown period, or 91 or 92. Are you up to date with how many interviews Danny Flexen's done, Rahim?
I have, and it's good. Like, he's
been putting in the graft.
Yeah. I don't want to do Zoom interviews. I don't want to talk unless there is something to talk about, or there's a story to be addressed. So in the same way, like, Danny obviously has made his own name in boxing. He's got a ton of relationships. He's got time on the board. He's on your side of the pond. And we work on the same network. But it's the same kind of thing. Like, if boxing were what it had been up until the last 3 months, he probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to talk to that many fighters on this channel during this short amount of time, because I'd be taking all the air out of the room. I'd be running around, filling up the content. Those fighters would be talking to me, whatnot. I don't want to do it. And you know what? He's taking the opportunity to do a bang-up job. He's killing it. And I'm happy for him. And I'm glad that the content is on the channel. And, like, everybody is doing what they feel is necessary at the time, but it also makes room for opportunities for other people to make their metal. That it's just, you can't go through something like what everybody is collectively going through and not figure something out, get better somehow. I think everybody's channel will be somewhat better because, like Marco said, he needs something creative to do. He needs something that he has passion for. Well, we were all doing something we had passion for. We're creative in our jobs, and we didn't really need to come up with anything other than what we were doing. But now you do. And I bet we'll produce something that would otherwise not exist in the world, except that we have this time and are put under this pressure to create it. And you know what? We're the guys to do it.
And let me touch on something that I've been saying in the various interviews that I've done outside of what I do and stuff like that. So I was scheduled to work a show in DC, and then it got canceled when all this shit happened. And then they frantically try to get us out of there and everything like that. And I told myself at that point, and I still, this is why, like, I've always been a person that I need to have passion in what I do, because that's the only way that I know that I'll do a 200% job compared to somebody else. If I'm not passionate about something, I'm not into it. And I told myself, this is the only time in your life, Marcos, and this is for everybody, that you're going to have this block of time to come out of this better as a person, better as an individual. Use the time to be productive, to learn, because a lot of people have this time off and are getting paid. You know, obviously us, we're self-employed. So, you know, it's a little bit different. It's stressful as fuck, not knowing how your channel is going to do next month, seeing the trends that you see with other people. But you got to have that mindset in this. Don't just waste this free time. You know, use it to be better, to be productive. That's the only way I've come out of this not going crazy. Honestly, I've lost a lot of weight already. I'm productive. I'm doing shit around here. I am being creative. I'm coming up with stuff. I'm catching up on shit I never had time to catch up on. Like, you got to stay actively in here. The moment this here is idle, you die as a person. The moment you stop learning stuff, you die mentally as a person, and it slowly trickles down to the rest of your being. So I think, you know, that's the one thing I think everybody should be doing if they are struggling with this time, is they got to put their time into something productive to make themselves better, because if you don't, you're gonna go freaking crazy. These walls right here, they'd be talking to me. Honestly, they'd be talking to me if I was just chilling at home eating tacos and just drinking tequila every single night. And trust me, I wanted to do that the very first night for a whole month, but I haven't allowed myself to do that. So we got to continue staying positive, and more importantly, continue being productive and getting better, especially now.
And at the end of this call, there'll be a hotline for anybody who's struggling like Marcos. If you need some support, we're going to have
You know what? I second that, Marcos, because for a moment there, because I still have Fuad working with me, and he's been doing a lot as well. And mentally, I really needed to kind of take a step back. And that was because it was some people saw it as an opportunity to go harder on interviews. I actually saw it as like, it was making me stressed out knowing that everything was paused. So I had to find something outside of work, outside of boxing. I had to step away from the whole idea of boxing for just a second to find that sort of peace in my mind and that balance, which I've learned to start gardening. I'm a great gardener right now. I got me a green
Dr. Green Thumbs right here. Dr. Green Thumbs.
I'm growing legitimately about 30 different vegetables right now. No exaggeration. I have a greenhouse in my parents' backyard.
You got the green, the actual green.
But my point is, it's like I started to get like anxiety attacks because I was overthinking everything. Well, what happens when this happens? Well, what? Because it's a ripple effect. It's like we all knew the ad rates were about to drop because companies weren't pumping money into promoting their brands anymore. Sponsors are looking. I literally had a sponsor the day I was going to sign on the dotted line, the day boxing got canceled. And it was like a 1-year contract. And I'm like, you're shitting me, right? Like this, there was all those stresses, like, and also the stress of making sure that my guy continues to get paid. I can't just be me getting paid. What am I going to do to sustain that? Because there's that added pressure to make sure that he's okay as well. And all of those things started to eat at me. And so when people were like going really hard with it, I respect that if that's what gives them peace. But with me, I needed something separate from that. I've literally can say that I've become a better cook. I've become more appreciative, like humbled by the situation, because right when you think you're doing really well, you know, reality sank in, like just like that, things can be taken away from you. So I get to spend time with my family more. I have not been able to spend this much time with my family in years. 9 years I haven't been able to be around my family like this, because I live in England, and in between that it's constant on the go, on the go, on the go. I had to learn to sit still because I didn't know how to do that anymore. That gave me anxiety. I'm used to traveling constantly. 2 weeks home, too much time. But now it's like I'm looking at things differently. I am optimistic. I do believe that we're all going to come back stronger. In the process, though, you got to take it day by day, because tomorrow my mood might change, or I might feel a certain way. The day after that, some great news might come my way. Who knows? We can't predict that. But overall, I needed to find a balance outside of just focusing on boxing interviews. We're still got content going up constantly, but my point is like I had to find a balance to make sure that I didn't lose my mind.
You know, and
exercise, whether that be going for walks or bought a bike to put in my parents' garage, like the little stationary bikes. So anything that gets you feeling at peace, where you're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
You know, and this also touches up on a point that's been pretty well published as well, is mental fatigue in people who work in YouTube, with YouTube and other niches and stuff like that. You know, given all of us are very hands-on with our channels, we're grinding every day, and these fight weeks are terrible in terms of how stressful they are for everybody, and how much manpower and hours put in. Is you know, this is a good time to kind of mentally decompress from all this, and kind of get your mind right, so you're not over fatigued mentally from doing this stuff. So you know, that's what my thing has been right now, because there is some times where like I see like, damn, like so and so is putting out a lot of content, like I need to get on it, and I got to tell myself, no dude, just chill, like chill out, like you need this time. There's nothing going on right now anyways. Like, better to preserve yourself now so that you could run harder when this thing starts back up again. But I think in general, it hasn't been talked about with us, but I've seen it before. And I've talked, I think, over the years with Michelle about this, is this shit's mentally draining. And, you know, it's something that's happened overall in the sphere of YouTube, is how not to get burnt out. Because we're constantly grinding, going everywhere. So, you know, that's also another positive from this. You know,
well, I'm a little bit jealous. It sounds like you guys have like lives. I don't have anything else. I haven't done any kind of good mental health, no kind of positive reinforcement. I'm not meditating. I'm just sitting around thinking about, when is this shit gonna be over? I take very long walks with slow tears dripping down my cheeks, waiting for boxing.
At least you're getting outside, though. That's the good thing. You're getting outside. That helps a lot, man. That helps a lot, getting outside and exercising.
Yes, I got me.
There's no traffic even to step in front of in my lowest moments. Like there's nothing else. Like I don't want to do interviews per se, because I don't do interviews because I love just talking for the sake of talking. I love to talk about fights. So since there's no fights, then the interviews that I'm talking about become more personal, and that I think is some way that you could be creative now. Like I'm being creatively trying to figure out ways to occupy my mind, but it's still about boxing. Like I don't, all this other stuff you guys are talking about, I'm wildly jealous that you have other things you can possibly focus on. This must be what it's like to have friends. I don't understand what's happening. This is a terrible way to live.
I haven't seen my friends in like 2 months, bro. It's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm used to that. I don't have any friends, so I don't miss people too much. This is a mistake you made, Marcos.
Okay. Right, I know it's earlier on in the day for you, 11:20 here, so I'm going to wrap this up now. Appreciate all your time, guys, because I know you'd probably be rather doing something else, but you're here on here, so fair play.
Yeah.
Look, I will say, I know we were talking about how kind of it is difficult, and we've all kind of spoken about why we are doing certain interviews or why we're not doing certain interviews, etc., etc. I'm just looking at it as a point of just kind of keeping the channel going, and that's all the content that's really been there for the last 2 months. Is a mixture of recycled content, new interviews, but we're not actually talking about anything. Like, how many times are we going to fucking talk about Joshua Fury? It's like it's being overused on every single platform, so I've kind of slipped into the mold of, right, well, we got to be talking about that, because it's been about keeping the channel. For me, it's just been, as far as IFL is concerned, there is nothing to talk about apart from getting ourselves out of the situation we are worldwide. So everything else is second rate. So it is just about keeping that channel. But there are, like, we mentioned about the publicists and promoters and that. I mean, Top Rank, Matchroom, MTK, Frank Warren, they have actually been accessible for me with their fighters. So I've got to shout them out, like especially Top Rank. Top Rank at the start of this give us access to all their fighters, and we all kind of nailed them within a couple of weeks and done them. So I'm still appreciative of that. But everything everyone said here, we make a point, and hopefully when we're out of this, possibly online stroke YouTube boxing could be, hopefully, is in a healthier position than pre-COVID. So I'll leave it there. Anything else you want to say, guys, before we wrap up?
Yeah, jokes aside, I do want to say that I'm appreciative of our colleague community, journalists, YouTubers that are covering boxing, those of us on this call and that know each other. Like, I think we have been good support for each other. We've done some collaborations. I think everybody respects each other's work. I'm watching what you guys are doing. I'm doing my thing. And I think, if anything, the most positive aspect of this is to find out that we really are a community, and that regardless of what stress or strife we might have competitively between us, there's a mutual respect and a common interest in delivering quality content to boxing fans. And there's an appreciation for the relationship that we all have with each other over the years. So I support you all, and I'm glad that you all do what you do. And when we get back to it, I think we should all have a bit of a united front so that we can rising tide, all boats are raised. And I think that we're all valuable parts of this community. So thanks for everybody's support.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, fight fans.
I just want to leave with, you just got to be positive. And if you are feeling down, if you are feeling bad mentally, to get outside and walk, and feel free to reach out to people. And also, I think even now more than ever, we got to realize that we got to be good to each other and be nice to each other. It's really divisive times right now, but at the end of the day, we're people. We're people that we all have the same dreams, the same wants. We all breathe the same air, and we all want the best for ourselves and for our families. So we just make sure to look out for each other and be kind to somebody. And just because somebody hasn't reached out to you, it doesn't mean that they don't care about you or they haven't thought about you. They could be going through the same shit that you're going as well. But the most important thing is to be positive during this time, even though it's hard to be positive, and be productive as well. But I would hope people see this and take that message.
Absolutely. Marcos, Michelle, Rahim, thank you very much for talking to IFL, but talking to each other and whatever else. By the way, if anyone wants to use this content for any purposes, you're free to do so. Crack on. And I don't know, maybe we have another catch up in 4 weeks' time and see where we are. See if the world's a better place.
Anytime, KUGAN. thank you for having all of this. Like, putting this together is ballsy. It's well done, sir. Well done.
This was carefully selected as well. This wasn't like, oh, who can do it? It was Ask Michelle. This was like carefully selected with the four of us. So maybe there's a bigger picture. Maybe I got you in here for another reason. Who knows?
Yes. It looks like a bigger picture. All right. Cheers, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, KUGAN.